So, while I was planning this restoration video for the Range Rover project, I did in fact realise it was basically just going to be me grinding the rust off it, preparing for the next stage in the project. So, I thought, what topic can I add into this to make it more interesting? And then I started to read about the SAS Range Rovers. Range Rovers are the special air service used typically from the 70s to the 90s using the classic Range Rover chassis. This is a topic that I should be able to explain pretty well, as I have a Range Rover in pieces as it is, which should allow me to show you exactly where the modifications were likely to be mounted. Of which we'll start off with the most obvious modification that you can imagine them having, that being added armour. Now, when I was researching for this video, it was quite hard to find exact details due to the clandestine nature of which these were used in. So it's hard to find what exactly they were ballistically rated to. Just easy to find that a lot of them had extra armour added onto them. They were meant to be discreet though, so they wanted the armour hidden underneath the body panels. Something that is very easy to do on these classic Range Rovers. These really are like Meccano cars with nicely shaped body panels stuck over the top of them. Which, if you drop down here, we can see how I've got the wing removed on the back, and you can imagine how easy it'd be to put an armour plate on here to protect whatever you've got in the boot, which also might be weapons hidden in the boot. This is also where I'm going to start grinding first. I'm going to clean this part up here. I'm hoping this body panel is repairable. It should be, because the rust is just at the bottom. So while I'm talking about the details of these classic Range Rovers, I'll also be doing some cleaning. From what I was able to gather, they did also have bulletproof glass fitted. I imagine it was mainly in the windscreen though, as it would have been quite difficult to fit it in the side windows while maintaining a discreet look and getting the windows to work. It is worth noting that these vehicles did appear to be bought in batches and modified in batches, so it did mean that each batch could be slightly different, and it also meant that some vehicles were made to be completely discreet, and some not so much, like these Range Rovers that have assault platforms mounted on top of them. These are made as platforms these soldiers can climb on top of, extend ladders out, as you can see, to reach both second story windows and aircraft on the tarmac in case of a hostage scenario. I'll also take this moment to invite you into the comment section below. If there's something that you know about these Special Forces Range Rovers, please let me know. Researching this was quite difficult to find much information on them at all. But I'm sure true Land Rover nerds will know more than me. And while you're at it, please like and subscribe. Something else that was added to go with those assault platforms was side steps, so that the soldiers could hang on to the side of them, hang on to the rack and everything on top, and have somewhere to put their feet. I will demonstrate this, but I don't think I should be standing on this anytime soon. Now it's time to tackle all of the back in here. I've got plenty of rust to grind out on the sides, bits on the cross member over the top of the chassis, which I think is a common thing for these. But while we're here, something else that the SAS used to have in their Range Rovers was they did used to have secure gun lockers in the back of here to hide and keep safe any of the equipment they had. I imagine as well in the back of here they probably had at least some of the communications equipment based in here. Back in them days, back in 70s, 80s and 90s, a lot of the communication equipment, especially long range stuff, was pretty hefty. So I can't imagine it all just being stuffed in little pockets behind the dash. But yeah, let's get grinding. My main goal for the restoration part of this video is to grind up all the back of the Range Rover here and really work out what needs to be welded in the future. I'm going to put a primer coat of paint over everything that doesn't need welding, mainly to make it a bit less of a daunting task for me to actually repair, while also making it easier to see what's actually to do. But back on the topic of those discreetly modified Special Forces Range Rovers, not only were they fitted with extra communications equipment, they might also have some hidden sirens and hidden flashing lights, as well as some more clandestine features like being able to turn off all of the brake lights to go fully stealth in the night. Of course, a lot of this extra electrical equipment, especially back in the day when these were used, were going to use a lot of power, so they did have an extra battery fitted with a split charging system to make sure they were never caught out with a flat battery. Something else they did have inside the Range Rovers was a near invisible roll cage, something that I'm certain they definitely needed, because if you look at these door pillars, they ain't stopping anything if this thing goes on its roof. As for the tyres, they did have run flat tyres, as you can imagine, and as for the suspension, they typically had uprated coils. On the versions that did have air suspension from the factory, that was also taken off with the uprated coils fitted, as apparently those early variants of air suspension were quite wobbly. And if we go up to the front, for protection to the front axle, they did also have axle guards I assume in case they had to ram anything, there was also meant to be some guards around the wheel arches as well for extra protection. Something else with these militarised Range Rovers is they weren't just used for the Special Air Service, but they were also used for MI6. With the fact that they could be easily loaded into Hercules transport aircraft and Chinook helicopters, while having excellent off-road capability and even in some cases being fitted with infrared headlights for night vision, all of these attributes coupled with a discreet look made it an excellent vehicle for hot extractions of MI6 personnel. However, how much of these vehicles were actually used for that purpose we're unlikely to ever know. But with all the modifications they had and the clandestine situations they were used in, they definitely were a real-life spy car fit for 007 himself. Finding out more about these SAS Range Rovers has made me think, what of these modifications could I possibly fit to mine? Well, it appears to already have uprated coil suspension, and I'm pretty sure I could add some armour on it for the fun of it in the future. As for the drivetrain, the SAS Range Rovers did typically have a tuned V8 engine. However, my end goal with this is to make a diesel-electric hybrid, which with the possibility of silent running would kind of make it a modern version. But for now, we'd better go back to where the project is at the minute, where I'm just about finished grinding, and it's going to be time to add some paint on the parts of the panels that aren't rusted through. Back on the project, I've got the sides painted black with the areas that need to be welded up left blank. And then if we look into the back, we've got it all primed out in grey oxide. Obviously there's all the underneath to do, but it does make it easier to highlight what needs welding and what doesn't, and frankly makes me feel better about it mentally. Which means we can get on with the next stage. With the production of this model of Range Rover coming to an end in 1996, the SAS Range Rovers were not long for this world. The Special Forces did make sure in buying one last batch of Range Rovers before the production ended, and they did look at the P38 Range Rover, albeit briefly, as they soon realised that this was a luxury upmarket version that didn't have the ruggedness that the old Range Rover had. It is then reported that the Special Forces went on to use the Land Rover Discovery, a vehicle that shares a lot of the ruggedness that this one did. However, the details of those are also pretty scarce. We can only assume that they had similar modifications to the classic Range Rovers. So the next video on the channel will either be some more restoration work on this, teamed with a history of these classic Range Rovers, or we're back on the Power Armour project, the main thing that I've done on the channel in the past. That being the quest to build a fully powered suit of armour. Which, if it's a video for that, it'll either be ballistic armour testing or it will be finally another actuator video. So with all that being said, hope you enjoyed the video, hope it was informative, and I hope to see you on the next one, and last of all, have a great day.